Hello, everyone, and welcome to the August Divorce Support Collective community webinar, Co-Parenting Strategies for Creating Stability. I am Angie Weber. I am the presenter for today, but I also am the director of the Divorce Support Collective. And at the beginning of every meeting, whether you're on live or you're watching the recording, we want to make sure that you understand a little bit more about our organization and what we stand for. So the Divorce Support Collective really strives to reimagine the process of divorce through collaboration and support from contemplation to thriving post-decree. Now you can see that we have a list of values out here that we really align everything we do with the events that we bring to you, the topics that we bring, and also the professional members that are a part of our organization, because all of us have a very unique, specific thing that we can help you with during divorce. However, we want to stay in our lane and we want to make sure that you get the type of support that you need. And so all of our professionals that, again, are a part of our organization really align with these core values. Now, at the end there, you're going to see that we really focus on empowering education. And so that is one of the reasons why we love to bring you these types of webinars and information and summits. And we just really want to make sure you know all the different options and resources out there to help you thrive through this journey. Again, whether you're in the contemplation stage or maybe you're years past post-decree and you're just trying to figure out what is the next chapter of your life looking like. Now, I do want to remind you, besides these webinars, we also have a lot of different ways of helping you and supporting you. And so, looks like one of those pictures got turned for some reason. That we have a growing professional directory that you can go to and you can find the types of support that you need. Now, we are across the United States, so it doesn't really matter where you are. If you need a provider that is not currently on our directory, that doesn't serve your area, please reach out to us and let us know. We will do the best that we can to connect you with someone who is highly qualified to help you in whatever area you are looking for. We also have a plethora of blogs that our members contribute to, so you're getting expert advice on many different topics in those blogs. We have these monthly webinars, so make sure that you're keeping track of what's coming up next. We also have summits that you can go watch. We are trying to do those a couple times a year, but all the ones that we've had in the past, you can go back and watch the replays, so getting information and education from all sorts of different industries on different topics. And then, of course, if you missed any of the webinars, you can always go back and watch the replays as well. So you can find all of this and more at thedivorcesupportcollective.com. Now, I always like to make just a note as we go into these webinars and we educate people through different areas that we want to create a safe space. We understand that divorce is very sensitive. We want to make sure that we're being respectful of different perspectives that come up on these webinars, and especially from our guests and attendees. We're here to empower and encourage, not to judge. Everyone's journey is so vastly different that, again, the whole point of this is to help educate you and give you ideas on the different types of support that you can be utilizing during this time and during your journey. Participation is encouraged but not required, so know that anytime you jump on a webinar, we understand that if you want to have your video off, or if you maybe don't really want to speak up. We always say that you can submit anonymous questions through the chat. We do record these webinars, obviously, so others can watch the recording at their own pace. But again, if you feel comfortable, you can ask it in the private chat on any of these webinars, but you can also send the messages anonymously or the questions anonymously to myself or when we have other speakers on, so that you can still get your question answered without giving any identifying details. But that is a little gist, again, about who we are at the Divorce Support Collective. I encourage you to go check out the divorcesupportcollective.com. But right now, we are going to get into our presentation for today, co-parenting strategies for creating stability. So I'm so excited for all of you, again, who are on live and who are watching, to learn some practical strategies that you can put in place. Of course, there's lots of blogs out there. There's other webinars. There's books. And sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. So my goal today is to provide you, again, with practical strategies that you can start implementing right away to see a change. Now, I just want to introduce myself a little bit more because, as I said, I am Angie. I am the director of the Divorce Support Collective, but I am also a business owner. My business is the Parent Toolbox. I am a parent coach, and I developed the Calm approach to parenting and co-parenting. So I want to give you a little bit of insight why I'm so passionate about helping co-parents. One of my first clients actually was a co-parent, and I really enjoyed working with them because they had a unique situation ahead of them. How can I be the parent that I want to be when I only have my kids half the time? And also, how do I navigate this relationship, this new relationship with my ex, because we don't really see eye to eye. Now, this client had been on her journey of co-parenting for quite a few years, but they were always looking for some new ways and new suggestions on how to improve the parenting, to create that stability in their home. And so that was kind of why the Divorce Support Collective came about. But do know that I have a huge passion for helping co-parents, whether they're at the beginning of their journey or their years post-decree and still are just trying to add to their toolboxes. So let's get into the information today. Now, co-parenting can often feel chaotic, unpredictable, and exhausting after divorce, especially if you feel like maybe your ex isn't pulling the same amount of weight as you. Now, obviously, this can lead to a lot of conflict, which actually, through studies and research, shows that the high conflict co-parenting is what affects the children more over the actual divorce. So yes, children can be negatively affected, resulting, in academics, behavioral, emotional challenges. But today we're going to go over again some simple strategies so it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to affect your child in this way. And really going to focus on creating that stability within your home. Now, why does stability matter, right? Well, kids thrive when they feel safe and they know what to expect. And sometimes, especially if you're new in the co-parenting journey, the children can feel very uneasy and unsettled because this is all new territory for everyone, including them. So children in divorced families with stable routines are significantly more likely to thrive emotionally and academically. So I got a few different resources and facts and things like that to just showcase a little bit about this. Consistent routines across households significantly reduce stress and anxiety in children after divorce. High parental conflict is the single strongest predictor of poor child outcomes post-divorce, more than the divorce itself that we already talked about. And children with parents who use positive cooperative co-parenting show higher self-esteem and better school performance versus those in high conflict, okay? But I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, well, Angie, this all sounds great. I wish this was the cooperative co-parenting journey I was on, but it's just not. My co-parent is not on board. They're combative. They fight me on everything. They're selfish, all the things, right? Well, of course, we would love it to be all butterflies and rainbows, but we know that that is just not the reality for every single person. And so we really want to make sure that we're focusing on ourselves, because I have some really good news for you if you are in this journey with a co-parent that maybe is not necessarily on board with everything that you're doing, is that one parent can make a difference. Yes, just you can make a big difference in your child's life, even if your ex is not active or on board. Now, research shows that the protective power of one stable parent, even again, if the other co-parent isn't fully cooperative, a consistent and emotionally supportive parent can still help their children thrive. So, again, you can make a huge difference, and I want to make sure you understand how powerful that is, especially in a co-parenting situation. But really, the first thing that we need to come to terms with and really keep in the forefront of our mind is, what can we control and what can't we control, right? Sometimes we need this good reminder, because we can hope and wish that our ex and that our co-parent will do things how we want to. It's just not the reality of it. So we need to, again, remind ourselves and really focus on what we can control, which is our communication. The communication in our homes, the communication with our kids, the communication with our exes. We have control over that. We have control over our home routines, even when they don't match what's happening at the other home. We have control over the rules that we have in our home, those boundaries and expectations. We're going to talk about that today. We have control over our emotions, and this is a powerful one. Again, something we're going to dive deep into today because emotions are like dominoes. So once one parent has it, or even a child, it can kind of rampantly go through everyone else. And soon we can find ourselves in this utter chaos that we don't want to be a part of. But if we can better control our emotion and get back to that calm state, the better outcome it's going to be for us and for our children. And of course, we can control the behaviors that we model, all right? So that is a big one. Again, we're going to get to that towards the end, but we can control how we proceed in this journey, even on our toughest days. Now, those are the things we can control, but what are the things we can't control, right? Well, we can't control our co-parents' communication, or co-parents' routines, or co-parents' house rules, or their emotions, which I know a lot of you understand that, and we can't control our co-parents' behavior that they're modeling to our children. Now, of course, we are not talking about situations that are abusive or that really are the safety issues for our children. That, of course, is a bigger conversation and needs professional help. However, for us, what we can do today, we can't control what's happening when our children are in the care of the co-parent if you split custody, okay? So as daunting as that may seem to some of you, it's actually very empowering that you know that you can only control what you can control, and we need to let go of some of the things that we cannot control, which are probably many more on that list, right? Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, I created the CALM approach. I use this both for parents who are in the same home and also co-parents, which of course is tailored a little bit differently, to help them create more communication, connection, and calm in their homes. Now, every letter of the CALM approach stands for a different foundational piece. So we're not going to be able to dive into every single piece of this today with our timing, but I did want to give you just kind of an oversight really quick of what the CALM approach stands for. Now, I know that there's a lot of different parenting styles out there. Some are maybe a little bit better than others. However, I do not believe in a one size fits all. Every family is so unique and different, even families who have gone through divorce. It just looks different, but you are still a family. Now, I like to say that these foundational pieces are meant to tailor, again, to your specific goals, needs, and wants, and children, because children are vastly different. So if you have more than one child, it is so important that you have a plethora of tools and strategies in order to help each of your children thrive. Coming from a mom of twins, I know that I have to use a lot of different tools for my son than I do for my daughter, even if I want the same outcome. So I'm going to go again through quickly what these foundational pieces are, and you're going to hear some of them throughout our time today. So the C stands for compassionate communication. So of course, we dig deep into different ways to talk with our children, different communication styles, but it's also a lot about building that connection, that intentional time with our family so we can build some of those solid foundational pieces. The A stands for awareness and accountability. So there are two different parts to this, and this is really where, as parents, we get to become curious with what's going on in our homes and with our children. That's where I like to say you kind of get to become a detective in this sense. So, sitting back, observing, and really trying to get to the root cause of what's happening with your children and in your home. Because children tell us what they need through their behavior. And yes, I know that is frustrating sometimes. We wish that they could just clearly communicate what's going on. However, sometimes they don't have the skills in order to do that. And so we need to observe and become curious about what's going on. So again, we can get to the root cause. And then of course, the accountability piece. So we talk a lot about boundaries and expectations and consequences, because that is such a huge piece, not only for us, but for them as well. And we talk about, how to really portray the correct ways to repair situations and to use problem solving in these ways. Oops. L is for learning emotional regulation. So I talk a lot about the window of tolerance. I talk about how to stay inside our sweet spots of emotions. I'm not going to be able to get into all of that today, even though it is such an important part, but I will give you some check-ins that are going to be helpful to help you really, again, create that emotional stability and calm in your home. And then the M is mindful modeling, really showcasing those behaviors, because as we talked about on the previous slide, we can control the behaviors that we model, which is what our children are learning from. So again, this is just an overview of my calm approach. We're not going to be able to get into everything, but I wanted to let you know, as you're going to be able to see a few of the things and where they fit as we continue on. So the first thing that I want to talk about in order to create stability in your home in a co-parenting situation is setting a solid foundation. So think of consistency as your child's foundation. Even if the other home is different, your steadiness is truly their anchor, okay? So I'm going to go through a few different things that I would suggest you to think about and start implementing in order to set that really solid foundation. Now, at the beginning of this whole webinar, I talked to you about the core values that we have for the Divorce Support Collective. And if you go on any company's website, to even my own for the Parent Toolbox, you're going to see core values. It's what businesses use to guide them in the products they use, the products that they sell, the services they offer, the type of people they collaborate. It is truly a guiding compass. But I want you to think if you have core values for your family. Now, you might know your personal core values, and you might have thoughts in your mind of what your family wants to be and look like. However, when is the last time you had this discussion with your children involved? It is so important that children feel like they need a voice, especially in a divorce situation. They may feel like they didn't get a say in any of this, and now they're having to kind of figure out all of these different emotions and different things going on. And so what we can do as families, even if it is just you and your children, again, half the time, is you can really start establishing these core values. So I have a couple examples of different core values that you can use to really guide. I suggest that you pick, like 3 to top 7. We don't want to go overboard with these things, right? But we just want to sit down and have just a conversation and ask your kids, what do you want our family to represent? And let everyone really talk. Now, if you have a larger list of core values, one of my suggestions is everyone kind of circles maybe 2 or 3 that they really like, and then go back and narrow it down so that you can find the true core values that you want your family to represent. Now, I want you to take it a step further though. I don't want you to just say, oh, these are our core values. That was really fun. Great, we can move on. Like, we need to keep consistently reminding each other about this. And so I want you to think about not only what is the word for your core value, but why is that important to your family? And more importantly, how are you going to represent this in your family? Now, not only is this setting a solid foundation inside your house, but it's also a way to reference back to when emotions do get high. Maybe you have multiple kids and they're continuously bickering and fighting, and that's when we kind of erupt. Instead, we can bring it back to, do you remember that one of our core values is respect? How do we show that? And are we doing that right now? It's a great reference. Now, I've had clients before who take this an extra step and they make canvases out of it, or artwork, or they print off the words and they hang them up around their house as those daily reminders of this is what our family represents. Again, it might be different than your co-parent, and that is okay. We are trying to create a safe space for our children in our homes when we have them, and creating that consistency and stability. So core values is a great place to start. The next one is really figure out, what are our family rules, right? What are these boundaries, these expectations, these limits that we want our children to abide by? Again, these may be extremely different than our co-parent. And our children might like to tell us how different they are, and that is okay, because remember, you can make a change in your home. And so when we think about family rules, there's 4 different areas that I always encourage families to go over when we're setting these rules. And that is, first, we need to lay out very clearly what is the boundary or expectation. Now, maybe it's that we go to bed at 8 o'clock. Maybe it's we only get an hour of screen time a day. Maybe it is that we only use kind words, in our home. The thing about rules is that as parents, we love to set them and we love to tell them to our children. Where the disconnect happens is that the kids don't always understand the why behind it. And that has less buy-in for them. So the next thing is when you establish those rules or those boundaries and expectations, figure out why is this important in our home? We go to bed at 8 o'clock. Why? Because we need a good night's sleep. We need our body to rest and our brains to recharge so that we can have a great day the next day. Now, again, it doesn't mean that your kids are going to be like, oh, I want to go to bed at 7 now, mom. Like, that sounds amazing. We want to make sure that they're still correlating a why to this boundary. But we also know as parents that boundaries get pushed, limits get tested. And I'm going to let you know that that is so incredibly normal for children. That is how they learn, right? Doesn't mean it's always the best thing because we get frustrated as parents. However, that is how they learn. And if we're shining the spotlight on us a little bit, I think that we can all agree as adults that we also push boundaries and limits. I'm going to make the assumption that I'm not the only one who pushes the speed limit sometimes. I know what the boundary is, which is the speed limit, and I know the why of it. And I also know the consequence, yet I still do it once in a while. So we need to make sure that we understand like this is all part of normal development with our children, especially if we're just establishing these and they alter differently between homes. But with the consequence, you need to make sure that, for lack of the better terms, that the punishment fits the crime. That is where a lot of power struggles come in. That if we say, well, you didn't clean your room yesterday, so you can't go to the birthday party next month, that's not necessarily a correlating consequence. However, it could be, you're not allowed to have anyone over until you clean your room. That is going to be more aligned and understandable for kids. Now, one thing you can do is, again, make this into a family conversation. You want everyone on board that when you're at our house, these are the rules, these are the expectations. So you can even ask your children, what do you think the consequence should be? What do you think should happen if we break this boundary or this rule? And you might be really surprised at their answer because sometimes they can actually be way more hard on themselves than we will as parents. And then, of course, the communication piece. So just like the core values, we don't want to do this one time and then push it aside and say, okay, well, that was great. I hope you remember it. We need to make sure that we're continuously communicating it. We don't only want to point out these boundaries and these consequences when they get broken. We want to make sure that we're having those continuous conversations with our kids to establish these so that it's always top of mind for them. That is going to create so much more stability and less power struggles and arguments within your home. Again, especially if your co-parent has completely different rules than you are. Now, hopefully your co-parent will agree on bedtimes and will agree on screen times, and that is the best case scenario. However, again, you can still hold firm in your house rules and expectations, even if your co-parent is doing something different. All right, and the last one for really setting that foundation are responsibilities. I hear from parents all of the time that, chores, as a better term, is really something that is frustrating for them. They feel like either they're taking everything on or they feel like they're nagging their children to constantly start doing stuff. And again, it turns into a power struggle. It turns into an argument. It turns into, well, so-and-so parent doesn't make me do that, which can, again, make us get very emotional and frustrated and lead from that point of view. So instead, we really want to come together again and set this foundation of what are our household responsibilities? Because we're a team when we're here and we're all responsible for things, and who is responsible for what. So listing out the task or the chore. Again, I like to stay away from chores because if I'm being honest, even as 37, I don't like doing chores. Our kids don't like doing chores. No one really loves chores. So we can look at it as that responsibility. But what is it? How frequently does it need to happen? And then who owns it? Who's responsible for that task? It might be everybody. Or it might be one child. Maybe if you have an animal, them feeding the animal, or if it's a cat, doing the litter box, that's their responsibilities on the days that they're at your house. And so really clarifying these and approaching it as a proactive item versus a reactive, where they walk in the door from the other parent's house, they might be overstimulated, and then all of a sudden we start telling them, oh, well, you need to do this, 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 and this. That makes them even more overstimulated, and again, can really break down the communication and connection, and you can feel like it kind of ruins their time at your home as well. Okay? All right. Next, we're going to go into predictability. This significantly lowers anxiety, and kids feel safer when they know what's going on. And so the next thing that I'm going to share with you is something that I tell all families to do, no matter what it looks like, how big they are, who's where. But predictability can really help kids thrive because they love to know what the schedule is, especially, again, in a co-parenting situation. If you're just starting out, it might feel very unfamiliar and very unpredictable to them. And, going between two different houses can have a really big impact on them. But if we're able to talk about it, be proactive about it, it can really help them thrive and adjust quicker to these different transitions. And so the thing that I always tell families to do is have a family meeting. Now, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I have so many meetings for work. This is the last thing that I want to do is, be the ruler of the family meeting. These are not supposed to be super rigid. They're supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be intentional, because what happens in today's society is our schedules are so overloaded. We're running from one thing to another. And as parents, we could have so many different things on our mind that we're running at high capacity all of the time. So if we are intentional about setting aside just 15 minutes, okay, that's all I'm saying, 15 minutes every single week where we can shut off distractions, we can bring everyone together, and we can really have a conversation. Now, I created the Calm Family Planner, but I'm going to show you what a family meeting looks like. You don't have to get the planner in order to use this. You can take what you learned from here today and start implementing it, but I just want to give you a structure of how easy this is and how it can really, again, bring our families together and really create that solid foundation. So this is an example of a family meeting in the planner, and you're going to see that there are a couple different sections. I'm going to run through each of them quickly. Again, you can just pull out a notebook and do this in your home. I will say that, sometimes from parents I hear, okay, I have the planner, I've been carrying it around with me, I don't know how to start. And to that I say, just start. It might not go perfect the first time, and that is okay. But just start. Maybe it's 10 minutes instead of 15 minutes, or maybe it goes into 20 minutes and you just feel even more connected with your family at that time. All of them are great outcomes, right? So the first part is, let's talk about it. So you're going to see there are a few questions that are not highlighted and one that is. So you can ask, what went well last week? What could we improve on? What are you excited? And then the highlighted one in the planner is actually a different one every single week. So it's a different communication question. So this one is, what is one thing you are proud of? This really opens up the meeting to talk about things, to kind of set everyone at ease and get everyone's voice to be heard. So everyone gets a chance to really share their input, because again, kids want to be heard. They want their input to be validated, just as we do as adults. So even though they're tiny humans, it doesn't mean that their voices aren't important. So this again is just a way to really bring everyone in and to start out the conversation, to have that start flowing. Now, the next part is looking ahead. So looking ahead at the week coming up. Now, you might be thinking, whoa, I have way too many things to fit in all those small squares. This is not to put in every single thing and every single timeline. These are for kind of the big things. So this is a great spot to signify, like, okay, you're going to be at my house these days. You're going to be at the other parent's house these days, so that they can visually see when they're going back and forth. But it also might be a great place to put, is there a sporting event? Is there a school event? Is there a family event happening? Is there something exciting, a trip coming up? These are great things to put in here. So again, your child can understand the flow of the week versus them feeling like they're just being rushed to one thing from one thing to another and getting surprised constantly, okay? Um, I personally love to use this for my kids when they're in school because then I can put down which one wants hot and which one wants cold every day, and then I don't have to remember it. But this is a great way to kind of see things ahead. The other reason why this piece is so important is because, again, our schedules get so busy. And we need to make sure that we are being intentional rather than sporadic with our family quality time, especially if you only have your kids part of the time. So if you look at this looking ahead and it is jam packed, you can't even fit everything in these squares, like the big things that are happening. It's a great reflection to say, whoa, let's go back to our core values and let's see, does our week align with our core values? Is our week so overloaded where I already know my children are having a hard time adjusting to the back and forth? Okay, we need to back off of a few things. We need to say no to some more things. Or is our schedule a little bit more open this week and we can say yes to stuff? It just gives a very great insight to it so that we and our children are not feeling overwhelmed. The next part is, and if you are like, I'm a block scheduler, Angie, I need to block in all the things, I will say, definitely do that as well. There is a page in the planner that follows every single family meeting where you can do that too. So, and it has a family challenge in there and everything. So, the next is show us the money. So financial literacy is so super important for our children to learn at a young age so they're not thrown into adulthood and like, oh, what do these numbers mean? I have to pay insurance and I have to pay this and I have to pay this. So of course you do not have to share with your children every cent and dollar that's coming in or what the exact, prices of everything. You can utilize this after the meeting to write in the specifics if you'd like. But it is important for our children to understand how money works. And so we could say, hey, our car payment's coming out this week. We have to pay for our car so that we can get to and from places. And that's why we want to take really good care of the car so it lasts us a long time. Then you can talk about family saving goals. Maybe you are trying to buy something for your house or you are trying to save for a vacation. Again, getting everyone on board and what that looks like so you can better communicate, like, how do we save money? How can we reach this goal? And then allowances or just kids' money saving goals as well. Are your kids saving up for something? Do they get allowance? Are they making money some other way? Is there a birthday coming up and they're going to get money for it? What are we going to do with that money? Again, just very important skills that our children are going to need eventually. And so it's much better to teach them at the beginning. What's for dinner? So hopefully I'm not the only one who maybe has had the comment of, I don't like this, or, oh my gosh, chicken again. And it can feel really frustrating, right? So again, this is a way to really get our kids excited about meals and having them really suggest what they want to eat for dinner. And again, this is something that they can look forward to as well as you're splitting, time between both houses of, oh, Friday night's going to be burger night, or Tuesday nights, we're going to actually have breakfast for dinner. So again, encourage everyone to give a suggestion, especially when they are going to be at your house versus the co-parent's house. Now on the side, you also see the shopping list. So yes, use these for the ingredients that, put down the ingredients that you need for those meals. But also, I love this because you're going to be putting down things like, do we need toothpaste, laundry detergent, shampoo, conditioner, those types of things that maybe your kids told you in passing at drop off for the other parent, and then you totally forget about it. This way you can be more prepared, more proactive, and really reduce your mental load, especially when you go to the store. And then lastly, there's the teamwork makes the dream work. So again, you can put down those tasks that need to be done around the house, whether it's those routine ones that they know about when they come back. Like my kids know they have to unload the dishwasher and they have to do the litter boxes. Like that is their daily thing. And maybe you have some extra tasks that need to be done. Maybe something special is coming up. Maybe you're having a get together at your house when they're back with you for the weekend. So what are some tasks that need to be done? And again, who's responsible? Whether it's a specific child, it's you, or maybe it's everyone together working together. Oh, I totally forgot to do the arrows. I just kept going there. So again, you don't have to have the planner to do that, but I'm going to tell you that doing these 15-minute a week meetings with your children is going to create so much stability and consistency. And it is also going to reduce your mental load. I hear from parents all of the time that they are a huge game changer, even after the first one or two. It is incredibly amazing the messages I get about that. So, okay, let's move on to emotional safety. Oh, yes, that is spelled incorrectly. So sorry about that. completely spelled wrong. But yes, emotional safety. Hopefully you can read between the lines there. I apologize for that. I had quite a few issues when I was creating this technology wise. So, all right. Children don't need you to fix everything, but they do need you to feel, they need to feel safe sharing with you, okay? As we already kind of talked about, emotionals can run rampant. And here's the thing about when a lot of us grew up. We heard things like, don't be sad, don't be angry. Why are you feeling that way? It's not a big deal. And what that did is it made us either think, oh, I'm wrong for feeling this way, or it made us think, oh, I'm just going to shove that down then because I don't know how to deal with this emotion and I'm not sure what to do with it. And so I'm just going to try shove it down, which eventually will always come back up. So how can we create more emotional resilience, intelligence in our home? Well, I always say that I work with the parents because, again, we usually have a little bit more of a hard time doing things, right? And I see that there are more spelling mistakes on here, so I apologize. So again, a lot of times we heard that what we were feeling were completely wrong. And so what I want to do, I talk a lot about this sweet spot of emotions. And a lot of times when I work with parents, they say, well, I feel like I go from 0 to 60 and I don't know how I got there. And then emotions are high. Maybe my co-parent let's say, for example, they sent a text that, hey, I'm going to be late again. And you instantly are in your fight or flight. You're like, what the heck? This happens all the time. I'm so angry about it. Again, we can control our emotions though, but first we need to understand when they're coming up in our bodies because our body is sending us cues all of the time. All right. So the first thing that I want you to think about, and again, this isn't going to be I have it down one time. You're going to have to work on this. It's going to be repetitive. It's going to take some grace and some patience from yourself to start really identifying these. So the first thing that you want to think about is, what are your body sensations? Where is it showing up in your body? Is your stomach getting tight? Are your shoulders starting to get tense? Is your face starting to get red? All of these different things that are happening. Just again, make note. Please note that throughout all these 5 check-in areas, we are not adding judgment. We are just becoming curious and we're becoming aware, okay? Next thing about body movement. Energy or feelings are energy, and sometimes they need to get out. So what kind of body movements are you having? After you get that text, are you sitting at the door and your foot is going up and down, or you're pacing back and forth? Just again, make notes of it. Or if you're on the complete opposite, you are in a situation where you're in your freeze mode, maybe you feel like you couldn't move your body if you try. You just feel frozen and you feel super heavy, okay? Then think, what are the thoughts that I'm having? And I'm sure if you get a message like this, probably a lot of thoughts, right? But I want you to think about what type of thoughts are they? Are they negative thoughts? Are they, self-critical thoughts? Are they also coming in really fast? Or are they coming in really slow where you feel like you can't even finish a thought necessarily? And you're kind of, again, just in that frozen mode. Then I want you to think about your emotions. So of course, it's really easy to say, let's say that we get that text from the co-parent and they say, I'm going to be late again. And we're like, I am so angry. The thing about emotions is that they can mask each other, okay? We can just say, oh, I'm angry. That's the only emotion that I'm feeling. And I'm just going to go with the anger right there. Now, every emotion is completely normal and valid, okay? So if you're angry, it's a completely normal emotion. But I want you to think about, is there something that it's masking? Because yes, your first instinct might be, I'm angry. But really, is there a deeper level? Could it be, I feel really sad for my kids right now because they've let them down again and they were waiting for them to come. And I don't want my kids to feel not loved or invalidated. And so again, just think about the different layers of emotion so you can really get to that root cause. And then your 5 senses, which might seem really silly, but when we are in different emotional states, it's very common for some of our senses to be heightened and other of them to be dulled. So I know when I'm in my fight or flight mode, my hearing is ramped up. Like I get very set off if I'm already getting outside of my sweet spot of emotions and I hear my dog bark, for example, which you may have heard earlier because that's what he was doing. But just kind of think about, are there any senses that are heightened or dulled? Maybe when you are in your fight or flight, you're so focused internally that your hearing actually is dulled. So your kids are trying to talk to you and you're just so inside your head that you're not listening or can't really listen to them. So again, these are just 5 areas that you can check in with. Just do a quick scan of yourself. The more that you practice this, the better you're going to be able to really be identifying what is happening inside. And you can understand when you're starting to kind of go from that 0 to 60, so we can stop it and we can pivot and we can do something else so we can get back to that calm state faster. Now, the other beautiful thing about using these check-ins is not only are we going to start doing this for ourselves so that we can feel more confident in handling our emotions, but then we can have conversations with our kids and we can start making sure that they're staying in tune with their emotions. Now, I always say we can validate emotions without accepting behavior. So that's an important thing to know. But I don't expect you to sit down with your children and say, all right, what body sensations are you having right now? Can you tell me about your body movements? Especially if they're younger, but we can start leading them with questions of, can you point to where this is showing up in your body? Can you share one thought with me that's happening in your brain? Do you feel like you need to move right now? So we can start kind of guiding them to better understand ourselves, but also have them stay in tune with their body so that they don't have to rewire themselves later on in life, okay? Now, when we do this, when we stay in our sweet spot of emotions, one, we can also be better active listeners, right? We can really communicate better with our children to make sure we're understanding them. And miscommunication is such a big piece of conflict that happens in co-parenting situations, but also inside of our house with our children too. And so communicating is just as much about listening as it is about talking. And so when we are in a better emotional state, when we can stay in that sweet spot, we're a better active listener. The other thing is that we model the calm. Calm is contagious, just as is other emotions. So if our kids see us handling these situations better, they are going to be able to adapt to that behavior. If they see us get that text message and go irate and start yelling and complaining, that's what they're going to start modeling when they feel upset and angry. So we really need to model the calm, and we can do that by making sure we're understanding when these emotions are coming up. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to lead with emotions sometimes. We're all human. It happens. But the more that we can practice this, the more times that we can bring ourselves back to that calm, the better it's going to be when our children see us doing that. And then it really helps us have that connection over control. We have those deeper conversations, we build those stronger foundations, and we're really able to connect with our children on a deeper level versus just trying to really control what's happening in the situation. Because as we talked about in the beginning, there's things we can control and there's things that we can't control, and we need to focus on those things that we can. All right. So this last part too is the mindful modeling that I kind of touched on, and we just talked about it a little bit, but really my goal is to reframe the saying, do as I say, not as I do. And this is supposed to be do as I do, right? We want to change it to that because again, children are watching us all of the time. Modeling calm is more powerful than lectures. It's more powerful than, control, than punishment. It is so effective that we are modeling the behavior that we want our kids to see and also adapt to. Again, they are probably going to come home after being with their other co-parent, and they may have different things that they're modeling. It may take a little bit to adjust. But what we can control is what we do in our home and how we model and how we bring that back to our core values and to our family rules to make sure that they understand the expectations. But we need to be following that, right? We need to be doing it ourselves. This is especially true, for example, with technology. If you're telling your kids, hey, you need to get off your phone, you're always on your screens, you need to put them down, we need to think, well, what are they seeing when they look at me? Am I on my phone all the time? Am I in front of a screen? So again, they're really, seeing what we're doing, and we need to make sure that we're properly modeling that as well, especially when it comes to communication with your ex, because we want to make sure that they are not caught in the crossfire of anything, that we really use other resources like, coaches and therapists and counselors and things like that to be our venting, not in front of our children. Now, with doing as I do, there are a few different things that I wanted to highlight here. One, this is extremely important too when it comes to setting boundaries, which I wish we could get into a ton. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about setting boundaries, but really, boundaries should be fluid and flexible. And we should be able to stand in these to know that they are protecting us as well, and we're not bad for having boundaries. So we can, obviously, we talked about boundaries in our home, like as far as the house rules go or the home rules go, but we can also have boundaries for ourselves. Now, this can be with our ex, and it can, if they continuously try to, feed into fights or arguments of, hey, I didn't appreciate you doing this, or they kind of go off subject, you can set the boundary and really decide, I will not be talking or replying back unless it pertains directly to the kids. You don't have to send another message. You can have that boundary that you will not give in, that you're going to stay in your sweet spot of emotion. So setting those boundaries. Now, this also goes with our kids too, right? Because they might come back and they might say at mom or dad's, I don't have any rules. I don't have to go to bed at 8. Now, this can be really frustrating, right? As a parent. But instead of reacting and getting outside of our sweet spot emotions, we can rather say, I understand that at mom or dad's house, they have a different bedtime. At this house, this is the bedtime that we have, and staying strong in our boundaries. So that's an important piece to model for our children as well, because they're seeing us do that too. And we want to make sure that they have healthy boundaries growing up as well. Staying consistent. So again, it's that do as I do, making sure that we're staying consistent with the boundaries, with the consequences, with the rules, with the responsibilities, with what we're saying and what we're doing, because that is really going to create the stability for our children, even if they're only in our home half of the time. And then also showcasing resilience. All right. That is an important piece for it. Things are not going to go perfect. I think we all know that, right? In life in general, and especially in co-parenting, it's not going to always be the smoothest ride. And so we really need to make sure that we're showing our kids that when things come up that we have to adapt, that we can really help them build up this resilience. A lot of people say that kids are just resilient in general. And while that can sometimes, be partially true, we also need to showcase that for them. Because at some point in our lives, we are not going to be here, or they're going to, fly the coop. They're going to be out of the nest, and they're going to be faced with adversity, and they're going to be faced with challenges. And we really need to help them build up their resilience as young of age as we can, so that they have those tools in order to overcome those life challenges that they may see in the future. And so even through a divorce, they're watching you how you handle it. They're watching you how you handle the co-parenting situation. And even if you feel like maybe I haven't done the best job right now, it's okay. It's never too late to get to pivot and to use some more tools, hopefully that you learned today. Because at the end of everything, your kids don't need perfection. In fact, they don't want perfection. They need stability. And they don't want a perfect parent. They just want you as a parent, and we just need to make sure that we're connecting. What ages of kids can you involve in the weekly meeting? That is a great question. Typically, I like to say around 4 to about 12, 13 years old. However, I also know some people who have used the planner when they have younger children, just as a way, honestly, of again, creating that consistency, getting everything down. But that's typically the sweet spot. About 4 to 12, 13 years old is a great age for that. So I hope that you learned some, again, practical strategies. If anyone else has a question, feel free to put it in there. I did want to just say thank you for being here today, whether, again, you're on live or you're watching the recording. But I do want to offer just additional support, because in this divorce journey, again, whether you're at the beginning or you're at the end, you don't have to do it alone. That is exactly why we created the Divorce Support Collective, to let you know that you don't have to be alone. There are tons of support out there to come and gather around you, be your A team to help you thrive through any part of the process that you're in right now. And so I did want to just say, if you are interested in learning more about the Calm approach or parenting session, I do have a free session that you can schedule on my website at theparenttoolbox.info. And also, if you are interested in getting the planner, you can find that under tools, and you can get a 10% discount with DS SC10. So again, I hope that you took away from this presentation. I hope that you feel more confident in your co-parenting journey, even if you feel like you're doing it alone. I'm going to stop the recording, but if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to ask. So thank you so much for joining, and definitely watch out for more webinars coming up soon.